What's up guys, Easy Philosophy, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to take a look at peak. Now, what is peak? Peak, Secrets from the New Science of Expertise is a book written by Anders Ericsson and Robert Poole. Ericsson has a PhD and is a professor of psychology at Florida State University. Poole worked at Science and Nature and has published many works in his career. Now, before we dive into the book, we need to explore the purpose. The question these two authors wanted to answer was, why are some people so amazingly good at what they do? First, let's look at the analogy. Let's say you want to climb a mountain. You want to climb to the peak. Now, there are two ways you can go about doing this. The first way, you can go by yourself, scaling the mountain by yourself while you have no experience, which gradually lowers your chances of making it up. Or, you could go with an experienced guide who climbed the mountain before and knows it very well. This gradually ups your chances of getting to the peak. Now, this book is your guide. It is meant to guide you and will guarantee, no matter how far you decide to go, that you are doing it in the most effective and efficient way using deliberate practice. It will show you the path to the peak, but how far you travel along that path is all up to you. Now let's dive into the power of purposeful practice. An experiment was conducted with a college student named Steve. Steve's objective was simple. He had to memorize a string of numbers. Now first, we need to take a look at short-term memory. First of all, what is short-term memory? Short-term memory is the memory the brain uses to hold on to small amounts of information for a brief period of time. This could be writing down an address after hearing it from a friend, or remembering the idea of previous lines and pages of a book to be able to understand overall what is happening. Or it can be remembering numbers to solve a simple math equation. Now, the main problem with short-term memory is that there is a strict limit to the number of items that a person can retain in short-term memory. So Steve faced a problem. Now the task was simple. It was just to memorize and recite a string of numbers. But Steve kept getting stuck. Now we know that there's a problem with short-term memory. That the brain has strict limits on how many items it can hold in short-term memory at once. So this limit is enough to remember a 7-digit phone number, but not a 9-digit social security number. Now let's take a look at the experiment. Steve was getting red numbers at a rate of about 1 number per second. Now constantly numbers were getting added onto each other, and this was too much for Steve's short-term memory to handle. He simply couldn't remember that many numbers at once. So Steve could memorize and recite 7 digits consistently. This is the amount of numbers in a phone number, but any more than 7 digits, and he was struggling. Now comes the breakthrough. How did he do it? Now Steve was given a strategy of practicing purposefully, which allowed him to slowly improve. The strategy went like this. First, Steve was read 1 digit, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. Let's say he recited the 5 digits correctly. He then moved on to 6 digits, and if he recited the 6 digits correctly, he would move on to 7. So basically, they were adding a number every time Steve correctly recited a string of numbers. Now what happens when he got it wrong? Let's say Steve was given 8 digits to recite, but he messed up on the last digit. Steve would then go back down to reciting 6 digits. Once he got that correct, he would go back up to 7 and 8 until he repeated the same process all over again. So they dropped the length of the string by 2 when Steve recited incorrectly, and kept going. Now this kept going on, and eventually Steve could recite 8 digits, then 9, then 10, but on the 11th digit he would recite incorrectly and would drop back down to 9. But he picked up the pace again and went back up to 10 and 11 and so on. This was the strategy they used. This was purposeful practice. Soon, Steve could recite 11 digits consistently using this method over and over again. So what was happening? Well, at first, Steve had a natural ceiling of about 8 or 9 digits, which is normal because, as we discussed earlier, short-term memory is enough to memorize a 7-digit phone number, but 8 or 9 digits is too much. So with practice, with purposeful practice, Steve was able to break this barrier, to break this natural ceiling. Soon, after the 16th session, Steve was able to recite 20 digits. And after the 100th session, Steve could memorize and recite 40 digits. After 200 and more sessions, Steve could correctly recite 82 digits. That is impressive. To put into perspective how many numbers 82 digits have, on the bottom of the screen, take a look at how many numbers Steve could have recited. So, Steve memorized 82 digits and achieved an incredible feat just by not giving up, by practicing the right way and continuing to work on it week after week. Now you might have noticed people keep getting better and better at what they do. For example, in 1908, Johnny Hayes set the incredible record of running the Olympic marathon in 2 hours, 55 minutes, and 18 seconds. Many people said that this was the greatest race of the century. But in 2024, the first place finishing time was 2 hours, 6 minutes, and 26 seconds. What a big difference from 1908. In diving, in 1908, the double somersault was banned for being too dangerous. But now, the double somersault is considered an entry-level dive, with middle schoolers and high schoolers even doing harder stunts than that. For memorization, in 1973, Timothy Pearson memorized 1,210 digits of pi. At the time, this was the undefeated record, but in 2015, Suresh Kumar Sharma memorized 70,030 digits of pi, absolutely shattering the 1973 record. How is this possible? Erickson and Poole answer, no matter what field you study, music or sports or chess or even something else, the most effective types of practice all follow the same set of general principles. This is purposeful practice. Now let's take a look at the difference between two people and how they practice. Jimmy and John both play the piano and are both practicing for an upcoming recital. Jimmy practices every day for 60 minutes, but he plays the piece beginning to end repeatedly, over and over again, not focusing on any individual part. Also, he doesn't spend extra time fixing mistakes. If he makes a mistake, he plays on and restarts from the beginning. John, on the other hand, he practices for 60 minutes too, but he plays from beginning to end, but also in the middle practices some parts individually, some parts he might think he needs extra work on. John also spends extra time fixing his mistakes, making sure they don't happen again. In the end, John wins the recital and receives first place, performed purposeful practice. John, while Jimmy did not. Let's look at another example. Billy and Bob are both hockey players. When Billy practices, he thinks about when practice will end. He thinks that when practice ends, he can go home, relax, watch TV, and he's thinking about what chips he will eat tonight. Bob, on the other hand, practices hard and thinks about his goal and his dream to play in the NHL. Bob practices with purpose. His purpose is to achieve his own goals. Now, to sum it up, deliberate practice, or purposeful practice, is the most powerful and effective form of practice. It is the center for all success. Applying the principles of deliberate practice is the best way to design practice methods in any area. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope this video gave a good sense of what the book Peak was going to talk about. I hope it convinced some of you to read the book. Whether you're working, you're a student, you're an athlete, this book is so important on how to tackle problems and get over obstacles. For those of you that read it, I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoy reading it. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.